All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
Coming to you with jazz hands, doing another Torah portion, and we call this
Vayera?
Talking Torah with Sabbath
Talking Torah.
Lounge.
That's right.
And we appreciate you being here. I was trying to throw it to you.
I got you. We'll edit that out in post.
Yes, in post. We do a lot of posting up in basketball too.
Post editing.
We were known for our height in basketball.
Yes.
But we are here talking about, how do you say it again?
Vayera.
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 And I appeared. What do you think that means? I appeared.
I'm guessing there's going to be someone that shows up.
Yes, in a big way, kind of.
Yeah.
So, and this is a pretty good painting. I'm sure it's a famous painting. I don't know my famous paintings, but it does seem to be showing a showdown.
There's something happening here. I think there's UFOs in there and everything. Or maybe that's the jetpack guy.
Maybe it's an all-seeing eye.
It's that jetpack guy.
Oh, that's the guy that's on the water with the jet.
Yeah.
That guy.
There, nailed it.
Yeah.
Right. So this is Exodus chapter 6, verse 2. Skip that first verse. We don't need it. And then through chapter 9, verse 35.
All right, so let's go into it. And so it is definitely about the plagues. And so I just showed Jake a lovely video, Plagues of Exodus, and he's got some good songs rumbling in his head from
That's right.
Something we used to use a long time ago is Bluefish TV, and they had this funny thing they did with this growling music and a spoof.
Yeah.
So
it was lovely.
Yes, lovely. So this is a PDF that you can easily find where people have taken down basically each plague was an attack on one of the gods or deities
of Egypt. And
so
showing Yahweh.
Anything, do we want to go down and say all of this or just hit a few of the points?
Let's just hit a few of the points maybe, because I think people can find this online, right?
Yeah, and to me, the Nile is a good one because the Nile was the lifeblood of the country. And so all of us probably in school at some point, 5th, 6th grade, you had to study Egypt. And you learned this. You learned that the Nile was it in Egypt. And if you got up very far off the Nile, you probably died. So it was everything. They shipped goods on the Nile. You know, they would grow something here and ship it up.
Yeah.
You know, because it flows north. And so there was just it was life in Egypt. Everything revolved around the Nile. The country of Egypt did not go very far off of that river.
Yeah. And then just knowing that, you know, they had all these different gods that they worshipped. This goddess with the head of a frog, a god over the dust of the earth, all this stuff. That it's just, I mean, that's what they were thinking, I guess.
Well, and there's definitely no coincidence that all this happens to the place that's considered the source of all the mystery religion in the world. Happened here in Egypt. And every culture took one of these gods and, you know, modified it somehow. And so that's why sometimes it gets really confusing. And so in movies like Zeitgeist, where they kind of try to go against what we hold to be true and say that it's a farce, I think they got confused on some of that stuff because the names of these deities are the same and different. The names change, but the deities are the same. Yeah,
right.
And so the Greeks and the Romans and the Babylonians, I did that in the wrong order, but you know, they all had a version of this that they got from Egypt.
Right.
Egypt kind of wrote the book on it, and then unfortunately for us living here in the United States, we took a lot of these things and we brought them into Washington, D.C., and you can find elements of these deities there if you know where to look, which is not hard, I don't think.
Yeah.
So anyway, it definitely is a targeted thing. Why do you think he targeted? Why did he go straight to their deities?
Well, I mean, to show that he's the one in charge, not them.
Yeah.
That they are not a thing.
Yeah. And by the end, I think he makes a pretty good point.
Pretty good point, yeah.
Pretty hard to argue.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have Exodus 6, but that's the part of the text. But Moses, it's clear that he appears as a god to Pharaoh,
Right.
and Pharaoh claimed to be God himself.
Right.
And so I think that's part of the miracle that happens with Moses, and the reason Moses gets a voice, because everyone else. I mean, you had to be special to get so close to Pharaoh. He did. It wasn't like you could just. I mean, it's just like going to see the president of the United States. You don't just go there.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that his entourage couldn't have intercepted this old man on the way to the Nile every day.
80-year-old man, when his
he's going to be there again. Just get him before I get there.
Yeah, take care of the crazy guy. But he had an audience with him, and it's because there was part of Pharaoh that was fascinated by Moses at some level, or considered him another deity. Moses definitely did not consider himself that way, but Pharaoh may have seen him that way, because clearly Pharaoh did not have the same understanding. So in essence, you also see that there's an attack with earth, wind, and fire here.
And water.
And water, yes. Yeah. I'm missing that.
You're stuck on the band, I think.
Yes, earth, wind, and fire. I think that's what I was thinking. In Exodus 9:23, once you read that.
And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and Yahweh sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and Yahweh rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So a lot of times we don't really think of a fire plague, but it was along with the hail plague.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just shows that Yahuwah has dominion over all of these elements, and he made that clear. That by the end of this, there's no one thinking that he didn't own all of these things and could do whatever he wanted to.
Right.
So plagues 1 through 3 were experienced by the Hebrews. They had to live through them.
Yeah. Yeah, why do you think that was?
I mean, I think it's all foreshadowing to us for sure, and in Revelation later. And then he makes this designation, which is interesting, that it's at plague 4, like the fourth commandment, being holy and set apart, keeping the Shabbat. And so this is when he starts showing them to be holy and set apart. That he makes this holy, set apart designation. At plague 4, they are holy and set apart. And they may not have known what was going on, but he clearly made it known that he was separating his people.
Yeah, and I kind of, part of me pictures that in the creation, day 4 is it's kind of where everything kind of starts to, the system kind of comes together and is kind of self-sustaining almost at that point. This the earth and the sun and the moon as a system, the timeline and everything. It kind of day 4, it kind of all comes together as like, okay, now this thing can sustain life that I'm going to put on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And so if you haven't ever studied that concept that they had to live through and experience the first 3, that's something you should check out and try to figure out what does that mean for us. I think it definitely means end times. Doesn't mean that you get
free pass,
raptured out of here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people believe, and there used to be those bumper stickers of this car suddenly, if the driver disappears, it's because I've been raptured.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to quite work the way some people thought.
Yeah.
Exodus 9:14.
For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. So this was interesting because it's the plagues upon thy heart, right?
You think that'd be like fear?
Probably.
And so part of this is literally fear of death and fear of him, because they did not, it does appear that they forgot who he was, and we don't know how much fear of the one true Elohim that these Hebrews actually had. So we clearly know, we talked about last week, Jethro, I believe he had that fear, but we don't know that these other Hebrews had the fear, and certainly the Egyptians did not. And we learned that as they leave, there's some Egyptians that come with them, and they developed the fear
of Yahweh. Yep.
And so sometimes it does take adversity for us to get things.
Yeah, and you see too the fear, upon thy servants, right? The plagues on thy servants. Later, you see some of the servants going, "Oh, that Moses guy, he just said this plague was going to happen. Let's get the animals indoors."
Yeah.
And some of them ignored it, but some of them were like, "Oh, this is going to happen."
Yeah. I have seen that guy before, and when he says something, it happens. I listen to him.
Yeah.
I'm done listening to the Pharaoh guy. He seems like every time, and we don't know, but what people knew about the conversation.
But people are people.
Yeah, they had to talk. So, I mean,
good point, man.
They had to have those water cooler conversations and be like, "Hey, I heard that this is going to happen," or I heard that he talked to Pharaoh and they had some crazy thing.
Yeah.
So, did they talk in conspiracies then?
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so as you look at these plagues, the water to blood, it has to do with provision, and
right, he hit him right where it hurt.
Yeah,
you kind of can't live without water.
No, and especially in a desert where every bit of your being comes from what you produce and grow and can do with this river, which is ironic. Here you have this pagan nation living on this thing that Yahuwah created and reaping the benefits of something he made and not giving him any of the credit and glory. And I think he was done.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of humanity, isn't it?
Yeah. Living on his riches.
Yep.
And when we talk about frogs on a scientific term, a lot of people say you can look at the health of an ecosystem by its frogs. If you have a good frog population, your ecosystem is doing well.
Right. They're kind of one of the first bellwethers of like pollution in a system or something like that, because they absorb a lot of that stuff through their skin very easily.
And we don't think about frogs in our culture today about representing fertility, but
they certainly did then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we replaced that with rabbits. Forget frogs.
Yes, we went with the furry.
Yeah, they probably had more frogs over there than rabbits. Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
So gnats and lice, definitely that's an attack on the flesh, vanity, and they come from the earth, from the dust of the earth. But
yeah, and that was the earth thing was kind of a god of the earth, a god of the dust of the earth kind of attack too.
Maybe even a tie-in to creating man out of the dust of the earth. It's kind of interesting.
And we all know flies like waste and nasty. So there was heaps of dead frogs laying around. There's lots of stinky blood water.
Plenty of opportunity to lay your maggots, your babies in. So, and then the cattle, we talked about love, beauty, music. I don't really remember where we got that from. Do you? Cattle, love.
That was music. Kind of a, I think that was their deity, their cattle deity was about love and
Let's
beauty.
Go see if we have it in that.
Yeah. This page here. Present. You're covering up here. Fertility. The sick cattle. Stop moving. Start moving on. Often depicted with the head of horns of a bull, sometimes as a bull wearing the symbols of Hathor, fertility goddess. But I think that love beauty thing comes from the way that they worshipped the cattle at the time.
Yeah, they did a lot of things with it in their dress, and you've seen a lot of images that depicted that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last two we want to talk about boils, another vanity thing, hail, provision, especially boils and vanity, I would think that would, think about our movie stars and Hollywood people, how would a bunch of boils affect their life?
A little.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Yeah. No amount of makeup can probably cover up the boils they had.
No. And they were probably painful.
And oozing.
Did
they pop them?
I don't know. I don't know, man.
I don't know, but it sounds terrible. And it kind of wonders, did they have scars? Yeah, they might have had scars from the boils the rest of their life. I mean, if you can have acne scars and you have these terrible boils of biblical proportions in places you can't even imagine, yikes. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
No thanks. I'll pass on that one.
Yeah. No boils for me, thanks.
And
I'm driving.
Yeah, and then also it foreshadows the plagues that are coming. You know,
right.
There's a lot of scripture that talks about, you know, what gets us to these plagues, Jake. What's going to bring these plagues? What does he say?
Disobedience.
Disobedience, you know, not following his law.
Right.
So then you see there are plagues. And we see plagues today, and you know, and we can go into conspiracy theory and be like, "Oh, it's these people doing this," and it could be from the Father himself,
right?
And it's just a natural consequence because we are disobedient people. And,
we certainly are.
And the hail, you know, destroys their way of life, and you know, it's hard to imagine how devastated Egypt was, and we just don't have any concept.
Yeah, out here in Texas, you get hail on your crop, and you're like, not much you can do about that.
Yeah, and this just wasn't any hail. This was hail that killed a person. And, you know, we did have a hailstorm like this in Texas in 90-something. And it did kill some people. It was like it was basketball size.
Holy moly.
And at the time, it was the United States costliest hailstorm.
Wow.
And it was, I think, billions of dollars of damage. Like every car that was outside was totaled or had to be repaired. Roofs had to be replaced. You know, it was a really bad storm.
Yeah. Not to mention the burning down of the whole city.
Yeah. And this wasn't just normal hail. This could have been even like a little bit of sulfur raining down. Sodom and Gomorrah style.
Sodom and Gomorrah style,
mm-hmm. So anyway, but I think we are approaching the end here of week 14. Anything else you want to say about week 14?
There's, you know, I know a lot of people talk about the plagues. Read between the lines when you're reading through this stuff, because there's more than just the plagues happening there. It's, you know, it's the dialogue between Moses and the Pharaoh, and the dialogue between Moses and Yahweh, and just that whole interaction is interesting. And just don't get hung up on the you know, we do a high level kind of here with the Talking Torah series, and you know, the plagues is easy to pick out and maybe bring some things up that people haven't thought about with those. And yeah, there's a lot of information with that. And but when you're reading through it, don't forget to read between the lines.
Yeah, and one of those would be, you know, the common people in Egypt, the Hebrews and the Egyptians. What did they see? What did they experience? What did they think? And I think by the end, that's why you see this as a mixed multitude of people, because these Egyptians had been sitting around going, okay, what's going on here? And especially I think that's one reason he sets them apart, was so the Egyptians could see, hey, there's something different about those guys. Nothing's happening over there, you know, and you know that word had to get around, and it does. And so by the time they're leaving, they're like, what are y'all doing? Okay, well, I'm doing that. I like to live. This is terrible, and I'm ready to leave.
Yeah.
You know, he made it so terrible that leaving seems like leaving out into the unknown desert seems better than staying to see what happens.
Right.
So anyway.
So that's week 14, Vayera.
And we would ask you to, even though I think, can I exit out of that? I think
yes.
I can. So we do ask, you probably can't see it right now, but the subscribe button, we do ask that you would hit that. But Jake says it's over here. So
Well, now it's down here. See?
okay. And please subscribe. Please like us.
Please like us.
So, and share this with anyone that you find. And once again, we're not claiming to have a corner of the truth or have all the answers here. We want you to go read these things and find out what you think.
Right. And this stuff will be up on sabbathlounge.com. And you can check out the slides and everything there.
Yep. And if you Google Sabbath Lounge, you will find us pretty easily in different places. So once again, we appreciate you listening. This is Matt and
Jake
signing off.